The evening sun was setting behind the tall glass windows of the billionaire's mansion. Golden lights spread across the wide marble floor, bouncing off expensive vases, paintings, and furniture. But inside the mansion, the air felt heavy, almost lifeless. The billionaire stood alone on the balcony, his hands resting on the cold iron railing. His sharp suit looked perfect, his watch gleamed with diamonds. Yet his eyes carried something money could never hide: pain down below in the garden. Sad as only daughter. She was in a wheelchair, her body thin, her hands weak. Her head leaned slightly to the side as she stared at the grass, her face expressionless. Once, she had been a bright girl, always running around, always laughing. But ever since the accident, her life had changed. Her body no longer obeyed her. The doctors had said the word he hated most: paralyzed. For months he had tried everything. The best hospitals, the most famous doctors, the rarest treatments, none of it worked. His money could buy the world, but it could not buy his daughter's smile. And so every evening he stood at that balcony, watching her sit alone, watching her silence, waiting for a miracle that never came. But that evening something strange happened. The sound of footsteps came from the mansion gates. Then, the faint rhythm of clapping hands. It was uneven at first, almost clumsy, but then it grew stronger, faster. The billionaire frowned. Who could dare make such noise outside his mansion? He was about to call his guards when his eyes caught a movement. A boy, a poor boy, standing near the gates. His clothes were torn, his shoes had holes, and his face was covered with dust. But his body moved with energy, started to dance. At first, the billionaire thought it was foolish. Why would a boy dance outside a place like this? But before he could speak, he noticed something unbelievable. His daughter moved, her lips curved just a little. Faint smile appeared, soft, fragile, but real. The billionaire's heart skipped a beat. For months, he had begged to see that smile. Now it came, because of a stranger's dance. He leaned forward on the balcony, his eyes fixed on his daughter. She was looking at the boy. Her dull eyes sparkled faintly, like a hidden light returning. She wasn't laughing, but the corners of her lips trembled with joy. The billionaire could not believe it. His world, built on power and wealth, had given him nothing but failure in this fight. Yet here was a boy with nothing, giving his daughter something priceless, a reason to smile. Down in the garden, the servants noticed too. They whispered to each other in shock. Some were ready to chase the boy away, but they froze when they saw the girl. Her eyes were alive again. The billionaire's chest tightened. He had seen her cry. He had seen her scream in frustration. He had seen her stare into emptiness. Act. But he had not seen her smile, not since the accident. That single curve of her lips felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. He stayed silent, afraid that even the sound of his voice might break the moment. He just watched every second burning into his memory. The boy outside spun around, clapping his hands, stomping his feet, moving with rhythm that came not from training but from the soul. His dance wasn't perfect, it wasn't polished, but it was raw, full of energy, full of life. And somehow that life was reaching the girl in the wheelchair. The billionaire's hands gripped the railing tighter. His mind raced. Who was this boy? Why was he here? And why did his dance, of all things, touch his daughter in a way millions of dollars could not? For the first time in months, hope flickered inside him. The poor boy kept moving near the gates, his feet stamping against the dusty ground, his arms cutting through the air with rhythm. His dance had no stage, no music, no teacher, only his heart. He spun once, clapped twice, and jumped into a step that made even the guards pause. His torn shirt rose with the wind, his small chest glistening with sweat, yet his eyes did not blink away from the girl in the wheelchair. The billionaire's daughter sat frozen, staring at him. She had not reacted to anything for months. Expensive therapy, countless visitors, even her favorite toys brought nothing. But now, this boy's clumsy dance was doing what nothing else had done. A tiny sparkle returned to her dull eyes. She tilted her head, just slightly, as though her body was listening. Her lips trembled again. And then it happened. She let out the faintest laugh. It was soft, like a bird's first song at dawn. The servants gasped. Some put hands to their mouths. The billionaire himself nearly stumbled backward on the balcony. His daughter, his silent, broken daughter, was laughing. The boy noticed too. His movements grew faster, sharper, brighter. He clapped, stomped, twirled again, all while keeping his gaze fixed on her. Sweat ran down his face, but his smile grew wider. The billionaire's hands trembled. He had spent millions to hear that laugh again. And here was a poor boy, with nothing but broken shoes and a fearless heart, giving it freely. One of the guards whispered to another, "Should we stop him?" But before the other could reply, something unexpected happened. The girl lifted her weak hand. Her fingers twitched, rising slowly into the air, shaking, trembling but rising. She was pointing. Not at the guards, not at her father, but at the boy. "Wait," the billionaire whispered under his breath. The guards froze. The servants froze. Time itself seemed to stop. The billionaire's eyes burned with sudden tears. For months he had begged God for even a single sign that his daughter was still in there, still alive inside her broken body. Now hear it. Was all because of a poor stranger's dance? The boy slowed down his steps, lowering his movements as if responding to her gesture. His face softened. He bent his knees and bowed, pressing his palm against his chest, as though offering his heart to her. And in that moment, the billionaire felt something inside him break. For years, he had believed money was the answer to everything. Problems were solved with cash, with influence, with power. But no check could buy what he had just witnessed. The sound of his daughter's laugh still rang in his ears. The billionaire stepped back from the balcony, his heart pounding. He wanted to rush down, to demand answers, to ask this boy who he was. But another voice whispered inside him, "Don't break this moment." Down below, the servants stared in disbelief. Some whispered about miracles, others about fate. But the girl's eyes stayed locked on the boy. Her lips parted. And though her voice was weak, it carried across the garden. More. The billionaire's chest tightened. His daughter had spoken. It was only one word, but it was more than she had spoken in months. The boy's eyes widened. He hesitated, then nodded. And once again, his feet began to move. His arms sliced through the evening air, his body spinning, clapping, stomping. Dust rose around him, but his rhythm was clear and alive. The billionaire leaned on the railing, tears in his eyes, watching a miracle unfold. The billionaire wiped his eyes quickly, afraid the servants might see his weakness. But his heart was racing. He could not take his eyes off his daughter, or the boy who had done the impossible. The boy's dance grew slower now, as though he knew she was fragile. His bare feet tapped gently on the ground, his arms moved like waves, flowing and soft. And the girl's eyes followed him, every step, every turn. Then suddenly shouts broke the silence. "Stop right there." One of the guards yelled. 2 guards marched forward, their heavy boots striking the stone path. Their faces were stern, their eyes cold. To them, the boy was not a miracle. He was just an intruder, a poor, dirty child who had no right to be. Near the mansion, the boy froze. His body stiffened. For a second, fear flashed in his eyes. He looked left, right, as if ready to run. His chest rose and fell quickly, the rhythm of his dance broken. The girl's face changed. Her faint smile disappeared. Her weak hand trembled on the armrest of her wheelchair. The billionaire's heart dropped. He leaned forward on the balcony. "No, don't take this from her," he whispered. The guards were only doing their duty. When it was simple, protect the mansion, protect the family, remove any stranger. They reached for the boy. One of them raising a hand to grab his arm, but before they could, something remarkable happened. The girl raised her hand again. Her movements were shaky, but her meaning was clear. She was pointing not at the guards, but at the boy. Her lips trembled, and with great effort she forced out one word. "Stop." Ow. The air went still. The guards froze mid-step. They turned their heads slowly toward the girl. Their mouths hung open. In months of silence, they had never heard her speak. They exchanged stunned looks. The billionaire felt his chest burn. His daughter had spoken again, twice in one day. The boy's eyes widened, unsure what to do. He looked at the girl, then at the guards, then back at her. She kept her hand raised, her weak fingers shaking, but her eyes firm. Everyone understood. She was protecting him. The guards stepped back slowly, uncertain. One of them muttered, "Sir will not like this." But on the balcony, the billionaire's lips curled into a faint smile. For the first time in months, he felt his daughter's spirit shining through. The boy, still breathing hard, placed his palm on his chest once more and bowed gently toward the girl. His body shook with exhaustion, but his eyes glowed with gratitude. The girl tried to smile again, her lips curved, her weak body trembling. With the effort, it wasn't much, but to the billionaire, it was everything. The boy took one careful step back, ready to leave. He knew he did not belong in such a place. Yet before he could turn away, the girl's lips moved again. Her voice was weak, but clear enough for everyone to hear. "Dance more." The boy froze. His chest rose and fell. His tired eyes widened, and then, slowly, he nodded. The billionaire gripped the railing tighter, his mind racing. This boy, this poor stranger, had reached his daughter's soul. Something no doctor, no medicine, no fortune had done. And now he wanted to know more. Who was this boy? Why did his dance carry such power? And why, out of all the people in the world, did it awaken his daughter? The billionaire's life was built on control. But at this moment, he realized he was no longer in control of anything. His daughter was smiling again, and she was smiling, only for the boy. The boy wiped sweat from his forehead, his chest rising and falling with every breath. He was tired, but the girl's voice, soft and fragile, it was ears. Dance, more, it was not a command, it was a plea. A plea he could not refuse. He nodded slowly, his broken shoes scraping against the ground. Then, without music, without applause, he began again. His steps were lighter this time, slower, almost playful. He twirled in small circles, clapped his hands together, then tapped his feet in a rhythm that came from deep within. The dust rose around him, glowing orange under the evening sun. The girl's eyes followed every move. Her lips pressed together. At first, then slowly her shoulders shook. And suddenly it happened. She laughed. A real laugh, loud, clear, filled with joy. The servants gasped. Some put hands over their mouths. Others wiped tears from their eyes. Even the guards, standing stiff and proud a moment ago, looked at each other in disbelief. The billionaire's heart thundered in his chest. His knees nearly gave way. That sound, that sweet laugh, he had almost forgotten it. It had been locked away for so long that he thought he would never hear it again. But now, here it was. Rolling across the garden like music, he pressed a hand to his chest, whispering, "My little girl, she's still in there." The boy's smile widened. He jumped, spun, clapped his hands together, then bent low as though bowing before an invisible stage. Every move, every twist of his body pulled another giggle, another burst of laughter from the girl. Her hands trembled against the armrest of her wheelchair. Her eyes sparkled like they once did when she was healthy. For a moment, it seemed as though the chair had vanished. She was just a little girl again, watching magic unfold before her. The billionaire could not stay still. He rushed down from the balcony, his polished shoes echoing against the marble stairs. The servants quickly stepped aside as he stormed through the hall and out into the garden. When he stepped outside, the cool evening air hit his face. His daughter turned her head toward him, still laughing, and in that moment, he felt his heart crack open. He hadn't seen her so alive in months. The boy, noticing the billionaire's arrival, slowed his dance. His feet stopped, his arms dropped, and his eyes lowered in fear. He bowed his head, expecting anger, punishment, perhaps even worse. After all, he was a poor boy trespassing on a rich man's land. But instead of anger, he heard silence. He lifted his eyes slightly. The billionaire was not scowling. He was staring at his daughter, his lips trembling, his eyes wet with tears. The girl looked at her father, then at the boy, then back at her father. She opened her mouth, her weak voice carrying 3 words. He made me. The billionaire's breath caught. His daughter had spoken again. This time, not just 1 word, but 3. Each syllable hit him like a hammer against his heart. The boy dared to look up fully. His dark eyes met the billionaire's for the first time. He expected rage, maybe a harsh order to leave. But instead, he saw something strange. Respect. The billionaire's lips parted, but no words came out. He simply stood there, torn between shock and wonder, between pride and disbelief. His daughter's laugh still echoed in the garden. And deep inside, the billionaire knew one thing for certain. This boy was no ordinary stranger. The billionaire stood frozen in the garden, his daughter's. Laughter rang in his ears, soft and fragile, yet stronger than any sound he had heard in months. It was more valuable than the diamonds on his watch, more precious than the paintings in his halls, more powerful than all the money in his bank. And it had not come from doctors, not from medicine, not from the world's most expensive therapies. It had come from a poor boy, dancing in broken shoes. The servants were whispering among themselves. Some could not believe what they had just witnessed. Others crossed themselves, calling it a miracle. The guards, who had nearly dragged the boy away, now stood stiff and silent, ashamed of their actions. The boy, however, looked nervous. His dance slowed until he stopped completely. His chest rose and fell, his small body exhausted. Sweat trickled down his forehead. He glanced at the girl, then quickly lowered his eyes to the ground. He looked ready to run. The billionaire stepped forward. His polished shoes tapped against the stone path. The boy stiffened. The servants held their breath. No one dared speak when the billionaire stopped just a few feet away. He looked not at the boy, but at his daughter. She was smiling. Her cheeks were pink. Her eyes were shining. For months, she had sat like a statue, lifeless and broken. Now she looked alive again. The billionaire knelt down in front of her wheelchair. His expensive suit brushed against the grass, but he didn't care. He gently touched her hand, and to his shock, she gripped his fingers weakly. Tears blurred. His vision, he swallowed hard, whispering, "I miss this. I missed you." The girl smiled wider. "He brought me back." Her voice cracked, but her words were clear. The billionaire slowly turned his head toward the boy. The boy's eyes widened in fear. He stepped back, ready to flee. But the billionaire raised a hand not in anger, but in peace. "Wait," the billionaire said softly. His voice was steady, but his heart was pounding. The boy froze. His bare feet pressed into the dirt, his fists clenched at his sides. The billionaire stood up straight. For a moment, he said nothing. He simply studied the boy, his thin arms, his torn clothes, his tired but determined face. There was no pride in him, no arrogance, only courage. Finally, the billionaire spoke again. "You did something I could." "Not," the servants gasped. No one had ever heard their master speak like that to anyone, let alone a poor stranger. The boy blinked, sure if he had heard correctly. "You made her laugh," the billionaire continued. His voice shook. "You gave her something my money could not buy." The boy lowered his gaze again, but this time there was no fear in his eyes, only sadness. And something deeper, something hidden. The billionaire wanted to ask so many questions. Who was this boy? Where did he come from? How did his dance carry such power? But before he could, his daughter's weak voice broke the silence again. "Please, let him stay." The billionaire turned back to her. She was staring at him with pleading eyes, her small hands gripping the armrest of her wheelchair. "Him stay, Papa. I need him." The billionaire's breath caught. His daughter had not asked for anything in months. Now she was begging not for doctors, not for toys, not for medicine, but for this boy, and the billionaire knew. He could not say no. The garden was silent again. The billionaire stood tall, his daughter's words echoing in his heart. "Let him stay, Papa. I need him." The servants looked at one another in shock. No one dared speak. Even the guards. who had been ready to throw the boy out only moments ago, kept their heads lowered. The boy shifted nervously on his feet, his toes curled in the dirt, his eyes fixed on the ground, did not move, did not speak. From the effort of dancing, but there was no sound, only silence. The billionaire's sharp eyes studied him. He wanted to know everything about this child, wanted to ask his name, his family, why he was here. But the boy's silence was heavy, almost unshakable. Finally, the billionaire stepped closer. His voice was calm, but firm. "What is your name, boy?" The boy's lips parted. His eyes flickered up for just a moment, but no answer came. He pressed his lips tightly shut, then lowered his gaze again. The billionaire frowned. He was not a man used to being ignored. His empire ran on. Obedience. His voice was command. People moved when he spoke. Yet this poor boy stood before him and said nothing. "Speak," the billionaire urged. "Don't be afraid. I will not harm you." Still the boy was silent. The daughter watched with wide eyes. She lifted her hand slowly and pointed toward him. "Please, talk to him," she whispered. But the boy shook his head gently. His eyes grew wet, though he tried to hide it. He pressed his palm against his chest, then bowed deeply. That was his answer. The billionaire's jaw tightened. He was not used to mysteries. And this boy was a mystery from head to toe. "Very well," the billionaire muttered. "If you will not speak, then you will dance." For her. The girl's eyes lit up again. Her father's words were not cruel. They carried something different, hope. The boy hesitated. His thin shoulders trembled. But then he looked at the girl, her fragile smile, her pleading eyes on slowly. He nodded. He raised his arms again. His tired legs bent slightly. And once more, his body moved. This time, it was not wild. It was gentle, graceful, almost like a story being told without words. His arms floated through the air, his steps light, his spins soft. It was not just dance, it was communication, and the girl understood. She leaned forward in her wheelchair, her eyes shining brighter with every move. She clapped her weak hands together, an awkward, shaky clap, but still a clap. The servants gasped again. "She's moving," one whispered. The billionaire's eyes widened. He had never seen her clap since the accident. Now she was doing it, not for doctors, not for him, but for the boy. The boy smiled faintly as he danced. For a moment, it seemed as though he had forgotten his fear. His silence did not matter. His story was in his movement. The billionaire crossed his arms. His mind was racing. Who was this boy really? Why did his silence feel heavier than words? And why did his dance awaken life in his daughter's broken body? The billionaire knew one thing. He would find the answers. The billionaire watched in silence as the boy danced. The soft rhythm of his steps carried across the garden, his movements flowing like water, full of quiet power. His daughter's laughter returned, light and fragile, but enough to make the servants weep with joy. Every clap of her shaky hands felt like a miracle. Every sparkle in her eyes felt like the return of a piece of her soul. But the billionaire's mind was restless. He was not a man who liked mysteries, and this boy was the biggest mystery of his life. When the boy finally slowed down, bending forward with exhaustion, the billionaire stepped closer. His shadow fell across the boy, making him freeze. "Enough for today," the billionaire said. His voice was calm but heavy. The boy nodded once and lowered his eyes. The daughter leaned forward in her chair. "No, Papa, please let him continue." Her father placed a hand on her shoulder. "He will, my dear, but first I need to know who he is." The girl frowned softly. "Does it matter?" "It matters to me," the billionaire said. He turned to the boy again. "Tell me your name." "Where do you come from?" The boy stood. Frozen, his lips moved, but no sound came out. He swallowed hard, then shook his head. The billionaire narrowed his eyes. "Are you mute?" The boy looked up at him for the briefest moment. His dark eyes held something sharp. Pain, fear, but also defiance. Then he slowly shook his head again so he could speak, but chose not to. The billionaire's patience thinned. He was not used to being refused. His empire ran on answers, on control, on truth. But this boy gave him none. The servants whispered behind him. "Why won't he speak?" one said. "Perhaps he hides something," said another. The billionaire silenced them with a glare. "Listen to me, boy," he said firmly. "I am not your enemy. You have given my daughter something priceless. You have given her life again. I do not wish to harm you, but I need to understand. Why are you here? Why her?" The boy's chest rose and fell quickly. He wanted to answer, his eyes said so, but something held him back, a wall of silence he could not break. Instead, he did what he always did, pressed his palm against his chest, bowed low, and stepped back. The billionaire clenched his jaw. The boy's silence was driving him mad. But before he could press further, his daughter's voice cut through the tension. "Papa," she whispered, "maybe he doesn't speak with words. Maybe he speaks with dance." The billionaire froze. Her words struck him deep. He looked at his daughter, then at the boy again. Slowly he realized perhaps she was right. Perhaps the boy's silence was not weakness. Perhaps it was strength. A choice. The billionaire's eyes softened, but his mind grew sharper. If the boy would not speak, then he would find the truth himself. No one entered his world without being known. He would uncover the boy's secret, no matter what it took. The night settled over the mansion. Golden lights glowed from the windows, but the garden remained quiet. The servants had returned inside, whispering about what they had seen. The guards stayed at their posts, still confused about the strange boy who had walked into their master's world. But the billionaire could not sleep. He sat in his study, staring at the flames in the fireplace. Papers lay scattered across his desk, business reports, contracts, investments. Things that once commanded his full attention now meant nothing. His mind kept circling back to the image of his daughter. Laughing, that sound still echoed in his ears. It was sweeter than any deal, more valuable than any treasure. And it had been given not by doctors, not by medicine, but by a poor boy with torn shoes. Who is he? The billionaire whispered to himself. His fingers tapped against the desk. Why did he come here? What is he hiding? A knock interrupted his thoughts. It was the maid. She bowed respectfully. "Sir, your daughter is asking for you." Billionaire stood at once. He walked quickly down the long corridor, his footsteps echoing against the marble. When he entered his daughter's room, he saw her sitting in her wheelchair by the window, staring at the moon. Her face lit up when she saw him. "Papa." He knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "What is it, my dear? Are you all right?" She nodded slowly, her voice soft but firm. Said the words he least expected. "Bring him back." The billionaire blinked. "Who?" "The boy," she whispered. Her eyes grew wide, pleading. "The one who danced." "Papa, I want him here, tomorrow, and the next day. I need him." The billionaire's throat tightened. She had not spoken so many words in months. Now, her voice was stronger, her eyes brighter. He held her hand gently. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "When he dances, I feel alive. I don't want that feeling to stop." The billionaire closed his eyes for a moment. Her words pierced him. Money, power, medicine, none of it had reached her heart. But this boy had. Finally, he whispered, "Very well. I will bring him back." Her face lit up with joy, and she leaned forward slightly, hugging him as best as her weak body allowed. That night, the billionaire made a decision. He called his most trusted men. "Find the boy," he ordered. "Search every street, every corner. I want him here tomorrow. But don't frighten him. Do you understand?" The men nodded and left at once, as the billionaire stood by his daughter's bed. Watching her fall asleep with a faint smile, he knew one thing for certain. Tomorrow, the boy would return. But what he didn't know was that finding him would reveal truths he was not prepared for. The next morning, the mansion woke earlier than usual. Guards moved with quiet urgency. The servants whispered about their master's strange new mission. The billionaire stood by the window of his study, watching the sunrise paint the sky gold. He had given his men one task: find the boy. And he would not rest until it was done. Down in the city, his trusted men spread out in every direction. They walked through crowded markets, dusty alleys, and noisy bus stops. The smell of fried food mixed with smoke filled the air as they asked questions. Have you seen a young boy? Thin, dark-skinned, ragged clothes? He dances. Most people shook their heads. Some laughed. There are many poor boys here, until one from another. But one old shopkeeper paused, scratched his beard, and said, Ah, yes. As I have seen a boy like that. Well, he dances near the old train station sometimes, not for money, not for food, just for himself. The men exchanged glances. That was unusual. Most street boys danced or sang only to earn coins. But this one? He danced in silence. For no one, they followed the lead. Hours passed before they reached a broken part of the city where the houses leaned against each other like tired men. Children ran barefoot in the dust, and stray dogs fought over scraps. At last, they spotted him. The boy was there, in the middle of a small, empty street, spinning slowly, his bare feet raising small clouds of dust. His movements were weaker than yesterday, but his face was calm, and then they saw why. A frail old woman sat on a wooden chair, clapping softly as he moved. Her hair was silver, her body thin as paper, but her eyes shone with pride. She was smiling at him the way only a grandmother could. One of the billionaire's men whispered, So that's why he dances. For her, the boy noticed the strangers at once. His body froze mid-step. Fear spread across his face. He ran to the old woman, placing himself in front of her like a shield. The men raised their hands gently. Don't be afraid. We mean no harm. Our master sent us. He wishes to see you. The boy shook his head fiercely. He clung to the old woman's chair, his eyes wide with alarm. The old woman coughed weakly. Her voice was soft but steady. Child, listen to them. The boy turned to her, shaking his head again. Tears welled in his eyes. The old woman placed her fragile hand on his arm. You cannot hide forever. Maybe this is the chance you were waiting for. The boy's lips trembled. His silence spoke louder than words. He wanted to stay. He wanted to protect her, but her eyes told him something he could not refuse. Finally, after a long moment, he nodded once. The men stepped forward carefully. One of them whispered, Our master only wishes for you to return. His daughter needs you. The boy glanced at his grandmother. She smiled faintly. Go, she said. Do not worry for me. And so, with heavy steps and a heart full of fear, the boy followed the men. What none of them knew was that the old woman's words carried more weight than anyone realized, because behind the boy's silence lay a truth so powerful it could break the billionaire's world apart. The car rolled smoothly through the city streets. Carrying the boy back toward the billionaire's mansion, he sat in the back seat, pressed against the door, his fists clenched tightly in his lap. His eyes darted from the guards to the window, as if searching for an escape. But he did not run. He only sat in silence, his thoughts locked deep inside. The men did not speak much either. They'd seen something in that old woman's eyes, something fragile, something heavy. It made them uneasy. At the mansion, the billionaire was waiting at the gates. The moment he saw the car pull in, he straightened, his sharp eyes fixed on the boy. The door opened. The boy stepped out slowly, his head bowed, his feet bare against the polished stone driveway. For a long moment, the billionaire just looked at him. The boy looked smaller here, swallowed by the grand size of the mansion. But there was something in his posture, quiet strength, even in fear. You came back, the billionaire said softly. The boy did not answer. The daughter's voice suddenly rang out from the balcony. He's here, she cried, her face glowing with joy. She waved eagerly, and for the first time, the boy's lips curved slightly. Just a hint of a smile. The billionaire noticed it. That faint smile carried more warmth than any words could. The daughter demanded he be brought to her. Quickly, servants guided the boy inside. The mansion's grand halls echoed with his bare footsteps. Expensive chandeliers and golden walls surrounded him, but he did not stare. His eyes only searched for her. When he entered her room, she clapped her hands with delight. "You came back. I knew you would." The boy bowed his head slightly, almost shyly, then took his place in front of her wheelchair. "Dance," she whispered eagerly. "Please." The boy hesitated. His eyes flickered toward the billionaire, who stood in the corner watching like a hawk. The billionaire gave a small nod. "So," the boy began. His movements were softer this time, slower, but filled with meaning. Each step, each spin seemed to carry a message. The girl's laughter filled the air again. Breaking the heavy silence of the mansion, the servants stood in the doorway, some with tears in their eyes. It was as if magic lived in his dance, magic that no medicine had ever given. The billionaire, however, was not watching the dance alone. He was watching the boy himself, every movement, every glance, and he saw it again, the silence. The boy did not speak, refused every question, every attempt to break through. But he spoke through his body, through his eyes, through the strange sorrow in his smile. When the dance ended, the daughter leaned forward and whispered, "Papa, I want him here. Always." The billionaire's chest tightened. He knew what she meant. He walked forward, his footsteps heavy. The boy froze, expecting anger. But instead, the billionaire placed a hand on his shoulder. "You have given my daughter something no one else could," he said slowly. "For that, you will not leave this house until I say so." The servants gasped. The daughter clapped with joy, but the boy's eyes widened. He was not a prisoner before, but now he felt like one. He lowered his gaze, hiding the storm in his heart, and the billionaire thought he had solved the problem. But what he did not know was this: by keeping the boy, he had just invited a secret into his home, a secret that could change everything. Days passed inside the mansion. The boy became a silent shadow in its golden halls. Every morning, he stood in front of the daughter's wheelchair, waiting quietly, until she asked, "Will you dance for me?" And every time he did. Sometimes his steps were light and playful, making her laugh so hard that the servants outside the room smiled through their tears. Other times his dance was slow and gentle, his movements like a lullaby, bringing peace to her tired eyes. The girl grew stronger. She still could not walk, but her voice grew louder, her cheeks brighter. For the first time in months, she wanted to eat, to talk, to live. She began asking him questions. "What is your favorite color?" she whispered one day.
Do you like?
"The rain? Do you ever dream?" The boy only listened. His silence never broke. But when she laughed, he smiled faintly. When she looked sad, his steps grew softer, as if to comfort her. And strangely, she understood him. She told her father, "Papa, he doesn't need words. I can hear him without them." The billionaire said nothing, but inside he was unsettled. He watched from the doorway as his daughter leaned forward, eyes glowing at the boy. She had never looked at anyone like that before, not even him. The boy had become more than a dancer. He was her joy, her hope, her reason to keep breathing. But to the billionaire, he was still a mystery. Late at night, when the mansion grew silent, the billionaire called his men into the study. "Find out everything about him," he ordered. His voice was low, cold. "Where he comes from, who his family is, why he will not speak. I want answers." The men nodded. They'd seen their master angry before, but this was different. It was not anger. It was obsession. The billionaire stared out the window into the dark night. His daughter's happiness was real, yes. But he could not shake the feeling that the boy carried a secret, one so dangerous it could not be ignored, and he would uncover it, no matter what it cost. The boy danced again the next morning, his bare feet gliding softly across the polished floor. The daughter clapped her hands, her laughter filling the mansion. But the billionaire wasn't watching this time. He had left quietly before the dance began. Far from the laughter, in a dim study filled with maps and papers, his men stood. Before him? "Well?" the billionaire demanded. His eyes were sharp, his hands clasped behind his back. One of the men shifted nervously. "We found where he lives, sir." "Where?" "In the poorest part of the city." Crumbling house near the old station. He lives there with an elderly woman, his grandmother, we believe. She is very sick, barely able to walk. The billionaire's jaw tightened, and his parents. The men exchanged uneasy glances. Finally one answered, "Dead. Years ago. No records of them remain, it seems. He has been alone for most of his life." The billionaire fell silent. For a moment, something like pity flickered across his face. But it vanished quickly. "Did you speak with the grandmother?" he asked. One man shook his head. "No, sir. She was too weak." "But the neighbors," said the boy, "rarely talks, even with them. Some say they have never heard his voice at all." The billionaire's eyes narrowed. "So he chooses silence." "Why?" No one answered. The room grew tense. The billionaire turned to the window, staring out at the vast gardens of his estate. Daughter's laughter drifted faintly from the distance. "Keep watching him," he ordered finally. His voice was calm but cold. "Do not let him out of sight. If he hides something, I will know it." The men bowed and left. Alone in the study, the billionaire sat at his desk, his fingers drumming slowly against the wood. The boy's story was tragic. Yes, poor orphaned, clinging to a sick grandmother. But something inside the billionaire refused to believe it ended there. The silence, the eyes that spoke more than words, the strange way he danced, as if carrying a message only his daughter could hear. No, it was not simple. The boy was hiding something deeper, and the billionaire would not rest until he uncovered it. Meanwhile, in her room, the daughter smiled as the boy finished his dance. She whispered softly, "You're my best friend." The boy looked at her, and though his lips never spoke, his eyes seemed to say the same. Neither of them knew that outside their fragile friendship, powerful forces were moving. For the billionaire had set his heart on the truth, and the truth was coming. The mansion was quiet that afternoon. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, painting the marble floor with gold. The boy stood ready, waiting for the daughter's request. But today she did not ask for a dance. She sat in her chair, holding a book, her eyes soft with thought. "Do you ever read?" she asked him gently. The boy tilted his head, unsure how to answer. She giggled. "Of course you don't need to tell me. You'll show me one day." The boy gave the faintest smile, but before their moment could continue, the door opened. Billionaire entered. His presence filled the room, making the air heavy. "Leave us," he told the servants. They bowed and slipped away. The daughter looked uneasy. "Papa, don't frighten him. I only wish to understand him," the billionaire said, his voice calm but firm. His eyes never left the boy. He walked slowly, circling the boy like a hunter circling prey. "You dance well, bring joy to my daughter, but I cannot trust what I do not know." The boy lowered his eyes, standing still. So the billionaire gave his first test. He placed a golden coin on the table. "Take it," he ordered. "If you are poor, you need it." The boy looked at the coin, then back at him, shook his head. The billionaire raised an eyebrow, too proud. He placed a second coin beside the first. "Take them, for your grandmother, if not for yourself." Again the boy shook his head. His fists tightened, but his eyes remained steady. The daughter spoke softly, "Papa, he doesn't want your gold." But the billionaire ignored her. He added more coins, their shine glittering in the sunlight. 10 gold coins, enough to buy food for months. "Still, you refuse?" The boy stared at the table, then turned his back on it. Silence filled the room. The daughter clapped suddenly, smiling. "See, Papa? He isn't here for money. He's here for me." The billionaire's jaw tightened, but inside, something shifted. This boy was not like the others he had seen begging in the streets. He did not dance for coins, nor bow for bread. He danced only for her, and that made him even more dangerous. "Very well," the billionaire said at last. "If you will not take my gold, then you will stay until I understand you." The boy bowed his head, but his eyes glimmered with something. Unreadable fear, yes, but also defiance. The daughter reached out and touched his hand. "Don't worry," she whispered. "I'll protect you." For the first time, the boy's lips trembled as if he almost spoke. But no words came, only silence. The billionaire saw it. And in that silence, his suspicion grew. This boy was no ordinary dancer, and soon the truth would break through. The days stretched into weeks, and the boy's presence in the mansion became normal. Servants no longer whispered when he passed. Guards no longer tightened their grip on their weapons. He was no longer an outsider, but to the daughter, he was more than a guest. He was her friend. Every morning, she asked for a dance. And every morning, he gave her one. When she laughed, he laughed with his eyes. When she cried, his movements softened until her tears faded. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned red, she whispered, "You know, before you came, I thought my life was over." The boy froze. Her voice trembled, but she kept speaking. "I could not walk. I could not smile. Every day I felt like a shadow in this house. And then you came." She looked at him, her eyes shining with tears. "You gave me back my laughter. You gave me hope." The boy's chest rose and fell sharply. His fists trembled at his sides. For a moment it looked like he wanted to speak. His lips parted, but only silence came. Instead, he turned and began to dance. But this time, his movements were different, stronger, fiercer. Almost like a promise. The daughter gasped. "You don't need words. I can feel what you're saying." She pressed a hand to her chest, and for the first time, she leaned forward in her wheelchair and tried to move her legs. The servants gasped. Her legs shook weak. Trembling, but they moved. The boy stopped suddenly. His eyes widened, his lips curved into the faintest smile. At that very moment, the billionaire entered. He froze in the doorway, watching his daughter's legs tremble with life for the first time in months. "My God," he whispered. The servants whispered in shock. Some cried. The daughter laughed through her tears. "Papa, did you see? He makes me stronger." The billionaire's heart pounded. He wanted to rush forward to hold her, to thank the boy. But another thought struck him like thunder. What kind of boy had the power to do this? He narrowed his eyes at the boy, who stood silently, breathing hard. There was no medicine, no doctor, no cure, only this boy. And the billionaire knew, without a doubt, that his secret was more powerful than he had imagined. The mansion was no longer the same. Servants whispered about miracles, guards spoke of mysteries, and the daughter's laughter filled the halls again. But the billionaire did not share their joy. His mind was restless, his heart heavy. He had seen it with his own eyes. His daughter's legs had moved. Not because of doctors, not because of medicine, but because of this silent boy, and that was something he could not explain. Late that night, while the mansion slept, the billionaire walked into the boy's small guest room. The boy sat on the floor, his back against the wall, eyes half closed in exhaustion. The billionaire's voice was low. "I know you can hear me. I know you understand." The boy opened his eyes, but said nothing. The billionaire knelt slowly, his face close. "My daughter's recovering because of you. It is no accident. So tell me, what are you hiding?" The boy's jaw tightened. For a brief second his lips moved, but then he shut them tight. His silence was unbreakable. The billionaire stood, frustrated. "Fine. If you won't tell me, I will find out myself." The next morning he sent his men back into the city. "Speak to the grandmother," he ordered. "Bring me the truth." The men obeyed. When they returned that evening, their faces were pale. "Well?" the billionaire demanded. The eldest man hesitated. "Sir, the grandmother said he was once different. Long ago he used to sing, he used to speak. But then, something happened." The billionaire's eyes narrowed. "What happened?" The man swallowed. "No one knows. One night years ago, his family was taken from him. Some say there was fire. Some say violence. The boy survived, but from that day, he never spoke again." Silence filled the study. The billionaire's chest tightened. A boy carrying such pain. A boy whose silence was not weakness, but a wound. He whispered, "And yet he dances." The man nodded. "Yes, sir. The grandmother said he dances because it is the only language left to him." The billionaire dismissed his men with a wave, but his thoughts were in chaos. The mystery was unfolding, but the truth was still incomplete. Who had taken the boy's family? Why did he fear words? And why had his dance reached into his daughter's broken body and lit a spark of life? Night, as the daughter drifted into sleep, the boy sat by her side. For a brief moment, when no one else was watching, he reached out and touched her trembling hand. And in that silence, his lips moved again. But this time, sound escaped. A single word. Soft. Broken. Her name. The daughter's eyes opened in shock. But before she could speak, the boy pressed a finger to his lips, begging her to keep the secret. For the first time, she understood he could speak. He had always been able to, but the reason he chose silence was something darker than she could ever imagine. The next morning, the mansion buzzed with excitement. Servants whispered that the girl's legs had moved again in her sleep. Doctors were summoned, but even they could not explain it. The billionaire stood in the hallway, restless. He wanted answers, and answers only the boy could give. He entered his daughter's room, finding her laughing softly as the boy danced. But when she saw her father, her smile faded. She glanced at the boy as if carrying a secret. The billionaire's voice was steady, but sharp. Enough hiding. Today I want the truth. The boy froze mid-step. His body trembled. The daughter's eyes filled with fear. "Papa, don't force him, I must," the billionaire interrupted. "If he can save you, then I must know who he is and why he carries such power." The boy backed away, his eyes darting to the door. His chest rose and fell like a trapped bird, and then the door creaked. The old grandmother was carried inside by two servants. Pale, fragile, but her eyes still sharp. She had begged to see the mansion one last time. The room fell silent. Her voice was weak but clear. "It is time." The billionaire turned sharply. "What do you mean?" She looked at the boy. "Child, no more silence. He must know." The boy's hands shook. Tears welled in his eyes. He opened his mouth and, this time the words broke free, raw and trembling. He killed them. The room went still. The billionaire's heart stopped. "What? What did you say?" The grandmother closed her eyes. "Years ago, your men came to the boy's village. You do not remember, but it was your company. Fire from your factories. Burned through the night. His family was trapped inside. He survived, but he lost everything." The billionaire staggered back, his face pale. Images from the past business deals, land taken, factories built in poor neighborhoods flashed in his mind. To him, it had been numbers. To this boy, it had been life and death. The boy's voice cracked as he cried out, louder now, "Because of you, I stopped speaking. Because of you, I lost my voice." The daughter gasped, tears streaming down her face. She looked from her father to the boy, torn between love and horror. The billionaire sank to his knees, his empire crumbling in his chest. For the first time in years, his proud voice broke. "Forgive me, I did not know." The boy stood trembling, his eyes burning with pain. But when he turned to the daughter, his expression softened. Her weak hands reached out. "Don't stop dancing," she whispered through tears. "Please, for me." The boy's chest heaved. He looked at the billionaire one last time, then back at the girl. Slowly, he began to dance again. Not for gold, not for revenge, but for her. The daughter's laughter returned, mixed with tears, and her legs trembled again stronger than before. The billionaire buried his face in his hands. He had built an empire of steel and gold, but here, in the silence of one broken boy, he saw the true cost, and he knew this was only the beginning. The boy's truth had shattered the walls of his mansion, and nothing would ever be the same again.